Hello, my name is Ted McLeland. This is my first video. Yeah, I've been doing this for a while. I do leather work and woodwork and kind of a handyman as well. In these video series, I'm going to kind of do a little bit of everything. Starting today, I'm going to start out with some leather work. I've been working on a recovering hymn book that's been worn out. It was kind of a cheap covering anyway, cheap hymn book. But anyway, my wife loves it. It's hers, so I'm going to fix it up for her. This isn't the first one that I've done, but and of course I learn something every time. I'm not a professional at this, but I do enjoy fixing things, and I've got a variety of I guess skills that I'm continually honing, and have been wanting to do kind of a YouTube deal for a while now. I've thought about it, and I actually had a setup for it with a webcam, but my computer my computer is subpar. So and now I have a phone that will do everything my computer will do plus some, and a lot faster. So that's what's kind of started me on this journey. Yeah, a little about me. I've had multiple different types of jobs, that kind of stuff. I've worked in underground coal mines. I've been a chimney sweep. I've installed stoves, hot tubs. I worked at a truss factory for a while. I've done framing. And then, of course, I'm a family man. My kids are grown now, but did that. Had foster kids for a while. And all during this, I've been doing handyman things, just remodeling houses, and the remodeling stuff actually started with my father when I was growing up, and he actually did leather work when he was younger for 4-H, and kind of traveled on into his 20s, but then kind of lost track of it. He started doing more circuitry and electronics. And that kind of took him on to where he is now, which actually he's kind of come for a circle. He's back into working with wood again and enjoying life that way. I continue to help people out as much as I can in my spare time, and when I'm not doing this, obviously. And just enjoy fixing things and seeing a problem. Sometimes even before it happens, trying to see those problems that are going to be forthcoming and fixing them before they happen. And of course, usually that has to start with a problem. But anyway, so to get going here, like I said, right now I'm working on recovering a Bible or a hymn book, and I've done at least 3 hymn books, one for myself a long time ago that I actually wound up giving to my son, this one and one other one. And I'm continuing, like I said, I'm continually honing my skills and learning things and figuring out different ways and better ways to do stuff. Anyway, here we go. All right, here we go. So here's my workbench for doing leather work. Amongst other things, this is essentially my desk. It transforms into many different things over even sometimes even just a day. So it is very dirty right now and messy, and I have about 3 projects going right now, and kind of the videos as we go forward will kind of reflect that. Instead of kind of sticking to one project per video, which could take years sometimes. Prime example, this right here is a Bible bag for a friend of mine that requested this bag about 3 years ago. And it's not that it's taken me 3 years to make it, but I've actually, this is like the second rendition or rendering of a bag. The first one I actually got into pieces and had stuff glued together and showed it to him, and he didn't like the colors. So, yeah, being custom, I asked him to pick out which leathers he liked out of what I had, and he picked what to me I thought I would never get rid of, believe it or not. But I'm really liking the way it's turning out with the black and the silver thread. I'm really enjoying making this and learning new ways of stitching. This is the first time that I've done this stitch across here. It's kind of a modified baseball stitch. And since it looks so good right here, looking more like a braid, I decided to go ahead and continue it. And it takes a lot of thread and a lot of time, but it looks gorgeous. And then this is another reason why things take me so long, is because I typically do all of my sewing or thread work, lacing, whatever you want to call it. All that's done by hand. Excuse me. So it takes a tremendous amount more time than it would if I was to use a machine. So now I do have a hand-driven cheap sewing machine. It's super cheap. I've done a lot of work to it to actually get it to work right, but yeah, it does the job okay, but it is extremely hard to get a straight line. Here's something that I did just yesterday actually, and you can see how not straight it is. Yeah, typically I don't use it unless you're not going to see it, and I'm still trying to decide on whether or not I want to keep this. But it is my wife's, so I may just throw it on there. But it's a little pocket for the inside of this hymn book, so she doesn't lose all the stuff, bookmarks and so on, and stuff that the things that she keeps in there. But anyway, so speaking of which, so here is the old cover, and the binding on the rib would have gone right here, and it had ripped almost all the way up. It was pretty much like this. There was about half of it that was still there, and in order to fix it, I essentially just ripped it apart. So it was already starting to rip right here as well. Again, just really cheap binding, or really cheap leather. It's super thin, and it is real leather, but it's super thin, and then yeah, it just wasn't bound very well. It was actually bound a little bit too tight on the back, and so if you as you open and close it, those pages tend to spread out and get they don't fold as tight. So if the binding is too tight, then there's no room for that to expand, and it just rips it apart. And then of course, just regular wear and tear with a cheap bag, it doesn't happen doesn't last very long. So so the parts of this that I've already done, I replaced the binding. I've ripped off everything that was already there down as far as I dared on the back pages here. So this book is bunches of bundles of pages. I don't know how well you can see it, but each one of these little bundles right there has been sewn together on the inside, and you can't really see it in here, but if you do get a worn out book, you can see where they've threaded a bundle of maybe 10 to 20 pages, something like that, together. And they're actually not just this length, they're double that. So essentially each one of these bundles is that, with 20 of these stacked and put together. And then they run the thread through the center of your fold, and then it gets tied together back here, and then the binding glues all that together on a flat surface on the back. So fortunately that hadn't broken down except for one bundle on the front, which was fairly easy to put back in. And you can kind of see just a little bit of a separation right there, but that could also be from wear. So something else that I've done for others as I redo these is, if they want, I add more marking ribbons, which gets actually glued in between my new binding and the netting that I put in, which is this right here. This stuff is real flimsy, but I cut it for the length of the book, so from here to here, just slightly less than probably a total of a 1/4 inch less, and then I fold it back and forth, and it creates a very tight bond, and you can kind of see it right here. So with layer upon layer of glue, so rebinding a book is not just an overnight thing. If you want to do it right, that is. Excuse me. Elixir of life. Okay. So, yeah, so I did that. She doesn't want the ribbon, so I pulled it out for her. She doesn't use them, so there's no sense in having it in here. She loves bookmarks. She's a reader. So, and then I just use a ribbon. Man. Wow. I just use a ribbon. This just comes from your craft stores. I picked something that was not closely woven. So you could get a little bit more closely woven if you'd like than this, or wider even. But typically for what I repair, this is good enough. If it gets any wider than that, then I supplement with the netting and actually bring the netting over further into the binding and the cover. So from here, well, and if you're going to do any of these, I do recommend making a clamp system. I had one made up, but in the last move that I had, it got lost somewhere, so probably wound up in the trash. So I'll have to make another one, and I'll probably do a video on making one of those. And I'll make it large enough to do pretty much any kind of book. About, I'll probably make it just over 12 inches. So it doesn't matter how big a book. I can do the larger children's books that are 12 inches or 11 inches. So anyway, yeah. So lots of glue. It takes a long time for this to dry and set up. And since it is kind of a water-based adhesive, it's Eco-Weld. I get it from Tandy. It's contact adhesive. I'm not using it exactly the way that it says to, just because this ribbon that I use is so porous, and it soaks up so much that it takes forever for it to set up. So I essentially put on a layer, or a pretty thick layer, and then let it sit for a couple of hours even, until it's kind of tacky, and then I push it all into place. But if I get it wet again, then all of it kind of tries to come loose. So you got to be kind of careful. Anyway, as far as the cover goes, to replace the cover, you can really learn a lot just from studying what you take apart. So if you can see, and if you can look at pretty much any book binding, you can see right here that this edge has been folded in all the way around, and then covered up with this leather and the paper hardener on the back. So, and what you're seeing there is my notes for it, since it's a piece of trash. So this is the paper, and I'm going to put the paper on here to start with. Essentially, it's going to go right in here and be glued as far in as I can get it to that, and I'm going to put just a little bit of glue right here as well to kind of sandwich it, and make sure that it's grabbing on both sides. So we'll set it in just like that, and I will come back later and trim the edges here. In fact, I might just take a little bit, maybe not. I'll leave it that way. But so I'll fold these in when I glue them down so they come down at kind of an angle, and then because you won't see it anyway, so it'll sit something like that. And then once that's set up, so I'll do one side at a time, otherwise it sticks to my table. And I may just flop this right over top. I might do both sides. If I'm gonna attach this to the paper, then I'll do both sides. So anyway, so I'm gonna start working, and since it takes a lot of time to do this, I'm gonna go ahead and put this on a speed track, so you don't have to listen to me talk to you, and you can just watch me work. Wow, I concocted too. Got that one side glued. I'm gonna let it sit there for that before I do anything else, and that's gonna sit there pretty much until tomorrow. Yeah, but I am gonna move this out of the way so I don't have, so I can actually work on other stuff and get my area cleaned up. But that's gonna be the easiest way for me to get that binding to stick. So yeah, so this is going to sit for about a day, and then we'll be back on it again. In the meantime, I might start working on resume working on this bag here and do some more stitching on it. I may not. So until then,